Hello, and welcome to this part of the series of excerpts from a live webinar hosted by CPS in April 2020. These topics focus on supporting instructors new to online teaching and learning. The 4 topics covered have been separated into individual videos for your convenience. Part 4, Kristen Lee from Professional Studies, will be offering wellness and the opportunity to look at approachability and integration.
I just want to greet everyone. It's so wonderful to be together as a collective, and I just want to thank all of my colleagues for the amazing contributions you're making to this discussion. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to just share a few thoughts on well-being in a virtual environment. Again, my name is Kristen Lee, and I'm the lead faculty for behavior science. And I have been teaching online for the past 11 years. And I just, again, so appreciate Joan and Sarah and Darren's, framings here about, how we can keep things simple and also, really integrate various models into the way that we're approaching our students to foster a safe environment, an environment where people feel seen and heard and that their contributions matter. And I want to just share a couple of windows. There is a dearth of research that exists around, the value of attending to social and emotional well-being, and that doesn't just exist in earlier spaces of education, but really across the lifespan. And so today I just want to focus briefly on a couple of things for us to take away and to reflect on and to implement action around. One is the notion of approachability within our virtual space, and then the other is integration of this conversation. And I want to just offer maybe a couple of disclaimers. When we think about student well-being and we think about protecting mental health, particularly when we think from a pre-COVID level, that it was already being framed as the age of anxiety. There were already both global and campus mental health crises being named. We also know from a research standpoint that virtual students, particularly adult learners and graduate students, sometimes have certain barriers in terms of recognizing their need for help. We know historically there has often been shame or stigma attached, or just a sense of unease around knowing how to navigate accessing the resources. And we saw a lot of this emerging before COVID. I think one thing that's been interesting to watch unfold in the higher ed space, I think people are recognizing the gravity of the situation at hand and are really interested in strategies that can help cultivate resilience. And I think what I find as I work with faculty is that I think a lot of times, there's sort of this trepidation, like, well, I don't want to overstep my boundaries, or I'm not here to be a clinician. And I want to emphasize that anything I mentioned today is just meant to give you additional resources. So this can, again, become embedded in your teaching practice, but not in a way that, again, is as asking you to tend to every level of all of your students in ways that you may not be equipped for. The other thing I really am hopeful about as we think about, again, this context we're all trying to navigate, this context of complexity and uncertainty, and just, again, there's so much need for us to be agile, is that what's good for our students is also good for us. And so, again, living in this unprecedented time, during this test of a lifetime, I think it's important that we just recognize kind of what we might call normalizing the situation, that if anyone is experiencing angst or worry or just a lot of vacillation in mood or maybe difficulty focusing, that, again, that is very much a part of it's a very proportionate reaction to a very stressful situation. And what we know from modern brain science is that, again, our brains are wired to sort of be pattern recognizers and, to have appraisals based on what's happening. But we also know that we are capable of, as meta people, using our metacognition as a species, we can be reflective and we can take advantage of the different scientifically grounded theories around protecting well-being and cultivating resilience. So all that to say that remembering that this can be a double dip for all of us, because, we're all co-learners and we're all experiencing an incredibly difficult situation to undergo. So I think we can't minimize or oversimplify that. Having said that, one way I might think about this is that we need to create a culture of help seeking and help giving. And we might also call this approachability. So you can see on the screen, there's quite a bit of stuff here. And you can certainly access the guide that I'm referencing through Active Minds. And again, I can provide some other resources. But it's just really important that that we just, when we communicate with our students, and this goes back to, I think, a lot of Sarah's framings around the COI model, but just recognizing again that we want to really humanize the learning experience and let folks know that we not only care about the content that they come away with and the skills, but that they also develop skills of resilience and that they're also cared for as human beings. So just reminding students, even though, again, I know sometimes it can feel like we're pointing out
is now
the obvious about resources, sometimes just the act of pointing out that they exist helps to normalize the experience, helps to remind folks, because sometimes it takes a while to hear or to know what those resources are. So just those check-ins, Sarah talked about her video check-ins, but even just maybe just mentioning, I care about you as students. I hope you're faring well during this time. I think sometimes we can have the conception, perhaps, like, let's just get completely to business. Let's be tactical. Let's ignore this other piece of what's going on. But what research says is when there is a big event going on, really attending to what's happening and reminding folks repeatedly about the resources. Also, depending on your comfort level as an instructor, I think, again, personalizing the experiences, letting people know that they're not alone, that even perhaps there might be activities that you're engaging in to help protect your well-being, and you share those ideas. And perhaps even, and Patty, if you want to move on to the next slide, perhaps you might want to just integrate into the classroom. You might even be able to tie it in with your learning outcomes and tie it into SAIL, for example, and say, I'm going to sort of have a discussion board or an activity that is centered on well-being and self-care, and letting folks know, again, that this is something that you're taking advantage of as a professional, really trying to maintain career resilience and personal resilience. And so, as far as, so just, approachability around the conversation, again, helping dismantle any sense of it being taboo or a sense of, just that, like, we all can just go on back to business as normal. But I think also with that healthy boundary that you are approachable, you have resources, you're willing to give your best, but you also know the limitations of the role, and yet you can triage and you can send on to advising teams and to the other host of resources we have available in our ecosystem to access. So just making, again, that very much just part of, this is the ethos of what we do. We're a caring community. We show up for each other, and it's really healthy to ask for help. Again, what we know from a mental health standpoint is that prevention is less costly than repair. And again, the enormity of the situation, many people in the field of mental health are not only concerned about, obviously, the getting physically sick, but the mental health repercussions. And obviously, in the long term, how do we sustain ourselves through the aftermath in the economic difficulties? So again, just moving into integration, again, other activities you can build in. I know that I'm lucky because I teach behavior science, so it also very much aligns with content. But now we have resources like small guided meditations or just self-care activities. What are you doing to take breaks from the screen, for example? Are you taking walks, or are you engaging in deep breathing? Are you making sure that you're not taking the mandate for social distancing literal, and that you're rather seeing it as physical distancing, and that you're connecting with people? So even just generating dialogue and discussion as a group as to the strategic things you're doing to engage in self-care can be beneficial. And again, it can create that culture of togetherness it can create that culture of recognizing that, there's no health without mental health. There's no, I would even say, maybe this might feel like a dramatic statement, but really there isn't success in a classroom or a learning environment when we feel isolated or disconnected, or that our mental health isn't protected. And again, it's not incumbent upon every instructor to tend to the multiple spectrum needs a learner might have, but to at least, again, create a safe environment where it can be discussed, where strategic action can be taken. And then again, the resources can always be readily available. And again, I think we're positioned so well because we form that trust, we form those bonds. Our students really recognize when we see them, and we care for them. And then we can really be a natural referral source to additional resources that might truly bolster one sense of well-being. We all love science. And again, I can provide some additional resources outside of this discussion around, evidence-based practices that are known to boost our well-being and mental health. So I just wish everyone well. And I thank you again for your collegiality and participation and all the ways you're showing up for your students, and remind you to show up for yourself as well. Give yourself permission to take breaks and to do the things you need to protect your well-being as well.
Thank you so much. So don't forget to check out the other parts of this series.